development. So I think right now, a little bit too early to say as far as who stood out, as far as who is going to be battling for those camp battles, those open roster spots that what we've been talking about for the last couple of months. But I feel like now that the first wave of cuts came earlier today with 6 players getting sent down to their respective clubs, we should be seeing that rev up in a little bit, especially with the first home preseason game on Wednesday.
Okay, so Danny, one of the things that stood out in one of Bruce Cassidy's press conferences, I kind of liked. I'd never really heard this take before, but someone was asking him about, as media members, we tinker around with the lines and what do we think about this, and he joked. He goes, "What'd you guys come up with?" But he had said that his way of finding the lines is not necessarily finding the best 3. He finds the best 2. He starts with 2 for chemistry and then works the third in. So he already knows which 2, a center and a wing, are going to work best. I actually like that. What did you take from that?
I like that too. And I think when you're having a situation that Bruce is going into this year where you're losing a bunch of forwards that were very instrumental in winning a Stanley Cup a couple of years ago, and now you have this big turnover, you got to try and start somewhere, and you got to start somewhere small. And you look at it from the standpoint of like the top line with Jack Eichel. He's played now with Ivan Barbashev. You now add in a Victor Olofsson, who Jack has had familiarity with in Buffalo, so that kind of fits. You look at William Karlsson. He's had some run with Pavel Dorofeev, as has Mark Stone, so that kind of works together. But now you think of the idea of putting Karlsson and Stone together, and that becomes enticing. Third line, a little bit of a mosh posh right now because we're trying to figure out where Tomas Hertl fits into this whole line, and they're starting with Nick Waugh and Alex Holtz, 2 guys that I think he can complement their games a little bit interestingly. Waugh not being at center is going to be a very interesting concept early on. And then the fourth line with Brett Howden and Keegan Kolsar, I think that's a good place to start because they have familiarity, and you're trying to find out which guy will take William Carrier's spot, and Tanner Pearson is first up in that line with the PTO. So I do like that. I think it gives Bruce a little bit of a easier start trying to figure out what works and what won't. And then when you can figure out which 2 work best, you can kind of find the complementary pieces to see which unlocks the whole potential of that line. So I think it's a really good thing that he's doing there.
Once again, speaking with Danny Webster, beat writer for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Golden Knights also been on the Aces beat. We'll touch them in just a minute. You were at game 1 of the WNBA opening round playoff last night against Seattle. Adin Hill, Ilya Samsonov, we got to speak to them, I believe, on the 3rd day. If Adin Hill, and we don't want to wish this upon anybody, but he's yet to play a full season. But if the injury-prone Adin Hill were to go down, I have a good feeling about it. I think this is a good spot where Samsonov might sort of rejuvenate his career a little bit. And coming out of a locker room that's always had that vibe, that good chemistry, I kind of have a good feeling about this, because it's one of those. It seems like one of those situations like you don't know what you're going to get, but at any given time, a goalie can get hot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're looking at it from that standpoint, it's going to be a very big year for both of those guys because they're both on. Adin Hill's on the last year of his contract. Ilya Samsonov's on the last year, going on a 1-year deal coming in here. So a big year for both of them as far as prove it. What can you do going into next off season? I really do like Samsonov. I do think there are questions. Obviously, with the way that he played in Toronto last year, he had the worst year of his career statistically. He talked about how that was really tough on him mentally, how that was really just trying to overcome the mental aspect when he was sent down to the AHL, and just how he had to battle back. And he did, to his credit, in the final couple months of the regular season, played really well to bounce back and put together a very respectable campaign. So I do think that there's a prove it side to it. And I also think that there is something to like about Samsonov coming in with a chip on his shoulder, a veteran who's won games, who's been to the playoffs, who's won playoff games, who has the ability to, when his number is called, to be that number one guy if Aiden Hill does go down. And obviously with Aiden, since it is a big year for him, you don't want to wish that on him. But if it does happen, the Golden Knights are pretty hopeful that with the system they have in place with Sean Burke and Bruce Cassidy's defensive structure, that Samsonov can pick up the slack when his number is called.
All right, so let's move on to the Las Vegas Aces. I know the Golden Knights did win in San Jose 4-2 last night. You had mentioned, we started to see it, but I think we'll see a lot more as they play more preseason games. The Aces, though, they struggle early on. Seattle puts it to them, and then A'ja Wilson puts her foot down a little bit, and fourth quarter runaway. And we see the Aces pull away for an 11-point win to take a 1-0 series lead against Seattle.
Yeah, that was it was a very interesting game, to say the least, from the standpoint of no matter what, when it seemed like the Aces were trying to establish momentum, when they were trying to get back in the game, Seattle always had a counterpunch. It was like the Aces would go up by 4, then the Storm would answer back with a NATO run. And then the Aces would come back, and the Storm would just hit shot after shot after shot. And then the fourth quarter happens, and you start to get 3 minutes in, 4 minutes in, and the Storm haven't made a basket. And you go 5 minutes in, 6 minutes in, and then they finally get to the free throw line and they make it, and they still haven't made a shot. The Aces held them to 2 points in the fourth quarter. The Storm shot 0 for 12 from the field. And ever since Becky Hammond arrived in Las Vegas, their calling card has always been using their defense and turning into offense. And even though they only scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, that was all they needed, because if they can play well out of their defense and get going in transition, then you're going to have A'ja Wilson erupt for 15 points like she did in the third quarter. You're going to see Tiffany Hayes, who, was pulled off the beach and has become, a leading candidate for sixth player of the year. She goes for 20 last night. Alicia Clark gives them great minutes off the bench last night. And when you're not having Kelsey Plum, make shots, Chelsea Gray is kind of, finding her rhythm. You start to see the identity of what the Aces are trying to do here. And it starts to build confidence that even though they're going to have a tough road if they want to complete this three-peat, this is the roster that's very capable of doing it. And it's a team that has a very good chance of doing it if they can find that cohesiveness that they found in the last 2 years. In game one, even though it got off to a rocky start, it was a strong finish for them to put that right foot forward.
Danny Webster from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, beat writer with the Golden Knights, and he is covering the Las Vegas Aces while Callie is away getting married. So you were at the game last night. Did you make it in time for Asia's MVP presser?
I did not, no.
Okay. You've been out a couple of times because Callie's been on the beat. You've been out a couple of times this year. She made a comment in the press conference that said, it was really back in February I put that fourth place vote behind me and really focused on this season. Now, I don't know about how many clips you've seen and how many times you've been there or you've heard it or seen it, but I've been there enough this year where that fourth place vote has come up several times from her and Becky during the regular season. It was not put behind her. They said that it was the motivation. We got about 45 seconds. Danny, first of all, have you heard them reference that? And how much do you think that motivated her this season?
So funny thing is, I was the one that actually texted in that question, and I felt bad that I didn't mention that because she kind of went on there. I'm not surprised to use it as motivation. I felt like ever since last year, she was going to go ahead and use that as motivation to win the second title, and she was going to use it as motivation this year. And it turned out to be one of the greatest individual regular seasons that we've ever seen. And you know what? I think it's a good thing that they got the MVP out of the way now, because now that she can solely focus on trying to win a third straight championship. So not surprised in the least, not surprised that she used that as fuel. And I wouldn't be surprised if she just put into that a little bit more just to try and go for this three-peat.
All right, Danny. Well, you're going to have to fuel up and find some motivation, and so am I, because we got a long season ahead of us. I'll look forward to seeing you. I'm debating Wednesday night, but if not, I'm sure I'll catch up with you this week. Thanks for joining us.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
There he is, Danny Webster from the RJ. Get on down here. First game's kicking off. 2 Monday Night Football games tonight. Here is the front yard, Ellis Island, and now begins the all-you-can-drink beer and all-you-can-drink. Check that, all-you-can-eat specials. 2 games for Monday Night Football, front yard.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You'll be able to